Okay, going. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olivia Khalili, and I'm very pleased to be here today to moderate the Women in Tech panel. So, my passion is social change. How do we have greater social good in the world? And I work for a large tech company, Yahoo, but I don't work in a technical capacity. I run our program called Yahoo for Good, which is about how do we leverage core components of the company, like the intellectual capital, the minds, the ideas of our employees, and our products for social good. So I feel very privileged, very grateful that I get to work within a tech company to try to utilize the products and the services that we have to affect change on a global scale. I'm very pleased to be joined today by 5 different women who represent different functional aspects across various tech companies. So I'm going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves with their name, what company they work with, a brief description of what the company does and what their role is, and then a fun personal fact. And we'll try to keep it to about 2 minutes per person so we can get into our discussion.
Sure. Hi, my name is Vidya Srinivasan. I work for Amazon, specifically for Amazon Web Services. As you guys know, Amazon gets you everything you need. And then the Web Services is the cloud division. So this is the part where you go and rent hardware, software, everything to run enterprises, run your IT, everything else. The role I play is I'm the general manager for a database service called Amazon Redshift. And I manage engineering, operations, QA, product management, and I hold the P&L for the service. So was an engineer all my life, and then slowly became an engineering manager, and now took on a more of a business role. What else was I supposed to share?
A fun fact.
A fun fact. Fun fact. Oh God, this you should have prepared me for.
Summer vacation happening, or next vacation, or last vacation?
So summer vacations have become super interesting in our family now. So I had 2 kids as of last year, and then I doubled the number of kids to 4 kids this year. I just had twins 6 months back. And so we are, I'm planning my first summer vacation, and it's been a complete nightmare because most of the travel tools do not accommodate for a family of 6. So.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel today. My name is Erica Brown, and I'm a marketing and communication specialist, and also a founder of a startup company. So I have about 10 years of Marcom's experience. I was at the Peace Corps before moving to San Francisco and trying to go all in with my startup idea. The company is called Switch, and it is a mobile application that enables friends to browse each other's closets and borrow and lend items versus buying and renting every time they have a need. So users will save money, diversify their style, and end up contributing to a better environment. And so I'm in the early stages of this startup. It's been a really fun journey. I've had to learn everything from exit strategies and equity, investing in cap, to the more technical side of having an application. So I look forward to sharing my experience with you all. And a fun fact, I do comedy on the side, stand-up comedy. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Bloodworth. I'm a user experience designer at LinkedIn. So what I do currently, I'm working on a team called lynda.com. So it was about a 500-person company that got acquired by LinkedIn, and the focus is around online learning. So courses and videos that you can watch to learn skills around different category areas, so business, creative, and technology. And then as a user experience designer, I'll work with engineers to improve the experience and create a better product for the user. A fun fact is I collect succulents, really cute little succulent cactus plants, and I have lots and lots of them.
Hi, it's great to be here. This is my first year with Technovation, so I'm really excited. My name is Amanda Ford. I'm a data scientist. If you don't know what that is, I'll be running a workshop all about data science later this afternoon. And I work at a company called Farmers Business Network. So right now we have millions of acres of data on farmland in the United States. And my job as a data scientist is to go through all of that data and look for ways that I can help farmers grow more food to feed all of the people on this planet. So that's been really cool. And I don't know if it's a fun fact, but it was fun for me. So before I was a data scientist, I was a sort of regular scientist. I have a PhD in astrophysics, and I got to work with data from the Hubble Space Telescope, and I figured out how galaxies are formed. So that's been really fun for me, too. Oh, sorry, just one more thing. Also, whenever I say that, I always try to say thank you, because astronomy funding is normally done by taxpayers, and it's a lot of international funding as well. So if you ever pay taxes in the US or any of our partner countries, you've helped support the Hubble Space Telescope, and you've helped support my job. So just always thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ranjit Daman. I am so honored to be here and sharing my experiences with all of you guys. I work as technical program manager at LinkedIn. So how many of you know LinkedIn? What does LinkedIn do? Huh? About more than half, that's nice. So it's the largest professional network. So LinkedIn's vision is to enable every professional in the world to do their best. And we do that by creating a platform, as well as the new acquisition that my colleague just talked about. So what do I do as a TPM? So my role, I like to summarize it as it's kind of bridge between technology as well as business. So currently I'm leading the largest program for LinkedIn flagship organization, about 200 team members. And my day-to-day job involved working cross-functionally with designers, product managers, engineers, QA testers, data scientists, literally everyone in the company. So that's on a professional front. On a personal front, I am the favorite mother, at least for now, for 2 young children. I have a 4-year-old boy and 2-year-old girl. And recently we took a trip to Seattle, Washington. I partially grew up in Seattle, and my kids went to Vancouver, Canada for the first time, so they had a great time learning about Canada, as well as crossing the border experience.
Great, thank you. So my fun fact, which I neglected to share up front, is I have a patent for an invention that I made when I was in first grade with the help of my father. And similar to your experience with Technovation, I had some mentoring support with an invention, and ended up entering a large invention competition, and was able to travel to Washington, D.C. and selected for my work for a device that took open old seals of a gallon milk jug. So something that's totally obsolete now, but it was a great experience for my 7-year-old self, and something that I imagine your experience here is even more fulfilling, given your accomplishments with your app development and the companies and people that you're getting to meet. So before our next question, I wanted to ask you all, for show of hands, in your life, do you have role models, either family members or friends, who are women in tech? Whether that's a technology role or they work in a tech company in a different type of capacity. So maybe a quarter to a third. Okay, great. So I think this is going to be a really fantastic discussion for those of you who don't have that exposure of what does it mean to be women in technology. And of course that varies from company to industry to country, but to hear from some of our guests up here. So we're going to go through, I'm not going to do kind of a handoff for everyone, but I think for this particular question, it is helpful to hear, how did you come into technology or entrepreneurship? Did you either study it in college, and what led you to, or if you didn't study it in college, how did you find your way into the work that you do now? This one.
So I have an undergrad in computer science from IIT Madras. I know some of you guys will probably be familiar with the universities in India. And then I came to the US to do a PhD in computer science. Didn't finish it, but that was the intent. So I came to this field pretty much because I studied that, and that was sort of the path.
Did you study it because you had an interest in engineering or technology?
No, it was more a process of elimination. When I was very young, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I thought, what's cooler than fixing people? That's awesome, and I'm a people person, and I'm going to be really good at this. But then as I grew older and I started studying this stuff, I realized that I was really good at physics, I was sort of good at math, I was mediocre in chemistry, and I really sucked at biology. There's just no way, there's just no way I was going to ever be that. And so I think there was a realization somewhere in, 14, 15, when I said, okay, that's not for me, it's not something I can excel at, I just don't have the aptitude for it. And so I had to stick to something that I was actually good at doing. And I knew I wanted to be, I like solving problems, I like taking things apart, I like putting it together. And I just studied really hard to be good at doing that. And so it was more a process of elimination. It wasn't so much that I knew from day one this is exactly what I wanted.
So I have a degree in public relations and a degree in Spanish, and have been in marketing for 10 years. So not necessarily the tech background that some of my panelists up here, but I had an idea and I had passion for that idea. And so I decided to basically solve the problem of people constantly having to buy new outfits and spend all of this money that you don't have, especially whenever you're in a college age developing your career. And I put it out the first time, and Shark Tank actually called me back for a casting call. And that was like, oh my God, people
Could you give a quick overview of what Shark Tank is for those of us who may
Shark
not know?
Tank is a national television show that invites entrepreneurs to pitch their ideas, and then the sharks are venture capitals who may invest in your project, and they want businesses that have already been established and have traction and have proof of concept and all of that. Mine was just an idea, and they still invited me back. So that was really what sort of tipped the scale for me to continue moving forward with this and start building the team. I had always been interested in technology, and more specifically where communications and technology meets. I was around and doing marketing and communications before social media. I know I don't look that old, but and so with the evolution of technology, so came the evolution of communications, and the digital communications became a lot more of the way that you talk to people. I have family in El Salvador, and it was impossible to talk to them very seamlessly before Facebook, before WhatsApp, before all of these platforms. So I took that interest in technology and found a way to merge communications and have a network that was more focused on female interactions through fashion exchange. And so that's sort of how I found myself to where I am today.
So you came into technology in part because you had an idea, and then you had to develop the concept around it. So
Exactly.
similar to probably to many of you who had an idea and then learned how to code an app that supported and facilitated that.
Yeah, and to that point, whenever you are going into a startup, there are so many things that you don't know, and that you have to be flexible and open-minded and vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm going to go for it, and I will learn this, and so I can move it forward.
I think the interesting part to share about how I got in to technology was I really wasn't planning on it. I had a passion for design and creating things, and a background in art, and I went to school. I thought about how could I apply that to the real world and do that for my job. And I studied graphic interactive communication, so that was, I think, the entry point into technology and using technology and art together to express ideas and solve problems. And then I also had a second major, business of art, which kind of allows me to think more on the business end, the strategic end. And I was doing a lot of advertising related jobs, and somehow on my LinkedIn reached out to me, and I interviewed for an internship while I was a junior in college, and I got that internship, came out to Silicon Valley, saw everything that was out here, was super inspired, and so since I've been at LinkedIn for 2 years now.
And can you give a little bit more context into what it means to be UX designer? So how does that bridge technology and then your artistic background and interests?
Yeah, so how many of you guys are familiar with user experience and product design? A few hands? Okay, yeah. So I think what most people are familiar with is graphic design. So, you know, you see logos, you see branding, but what I do is extending that way, way bigger and blowing that into a much larger scale and building a product, so a digital product. And so really what I gathered from, you know, the basic core skills of, you know, fundamentals of design like color theory and, you know, hierarchy and negative space, those things applied to what I do now, but you know, there's definitely a big learning in which you can take that and start to understand users through research. This is what we do now currently, user research. We look at data, if the product exists, and we start to incorporate that and really not just design or not just create, but we're trying to solve a problem. And that problem is supposed to benefit an end user and make their lives better and easier when they use technology. So what I focus on is how can I, through usability or simplifying a design, make things easier. So.
And did you have to learn the technical skills on the job at LinkedIn, or did you have some coming in?
I had most of my basic technical skills. So, you know, using, in school I learned how to use InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop. Those are the basic kind of core tools that I learned. But then on the job you learn so much more. You learn how to apply research. You learn how to work with engineers. You learn areas where you're supposed to gain more skills in. And what's really, I think, important to pull out from that is I went into a field where I didn't have to know 100% of it. You know, maybe I knew 60, 70%, and then I had the willingness to really carry that all the way through. And a lot, and the reason is because user experience and product design is a new area. And so that's what's cool about a field of technology is there's so many new things coming up. You have to really learn and be open to that.
So I came into tech from a science background. So I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. It was a very small town. I didn't have a lot of role models either. My mom was a single mom, so she worked all the time to support us, but there wasn't a lot of extra time to like go to science museums or like whatever. There wasn't anything like that. So basically what I knew from my time as a kid was that I wanted to leave that town. Like that was like my plan. And I was not athletic and I had no musical talent, so I figured I should go to college. So I worked really hard in school, and this was at a time where people kept telling me that girls weren't good at math and they weren't good at science and things like that. I don't know if you guys still hear that in your lives. Hopefully not, but if you do, I'm sorry. And I heard that too. And I just said, well, never mind. And so I worked really hard, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to a college out of state. And they had a really great astronomy program, and it was literally the first class I ever took at college. And I went in the first day, and I heard the first lecture, and I said, this is it. This is amazing. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And so that was really cool. So in the process of learning astronomy, I learned a whole bunch of math. I learned a whole bunch of physics. I learned a whole bunch of chemistry, because the elements come from the universe and from the stars. So that was all really exciting. And like you were talking about as well, I really had to teach a lot of, I had to learn a lot of that on my own. So what I realized looking back over my career is everything I've learned about science almost, I've learned from people older than me. But everything I've learned about technology, whether it's coding or how to use this interface or whatever, is from people younger than myself. So I got really good about asking for help and then also organizing. So in graduate school, we didn't have any kind of training on programming or using any of the latest astronomical applications or tools. There was none of that. You were just expected to know it. And I said, well, I don't know this, and maybe I'm not the only one. And so we organized like a seminar. And so that's something that I've done over and over again in my career, is like, I don't know this, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. And so I was able to kind of organize that. So after doing astronomy for a really long time, I had a really great experience with that. But it just kind of bothered me that I felt like I wasn't helping people. I felt like I just wasn't doing something that really mattered. And I had an astronomy colleague who knew somebody at my current company and was like, you know how to work with large numbers, you're really good at math, you know how to do all of this, why don't you work with agriculture? And I said, that sounds really great, that sounds like something that would be helpful. And so that's how I got into the tech space.
So my journey is, my father wanted me to be a nurse. I am eldest of 5 kids in my family. And my family moved to Seattle when I was in 10th grade, and my father said, well, nursing is a pretty stable career, and you should go into nursing, you'll, guaranteed a job and all that. So, but I was really good in math and science, and above that, I just liked problem solving in general. I didn't care what kind of problems they are, whether problems at school or even within family. I was just good into, working through chaotic situations. And I decided I'm going to go into chemical engineering because I was really good in chemistry and stuff. So I got accepted into the program. 1 year into the program, I learned what does it mean to be a chemical engineer in the real world. And how did I learn that? Through university, there was a program called WISE, Women in Science and Engineering. And I was paired with the mentor from a company called Boeing in Seattle. So I met with her twice, and I asked her, what does it mean to be a chemical engineer in reality? So she told me, you work in a fab, you do this and that, and I realized, oh my God, that's not my personality. Even though I'm good in all this, I cannot imagine myself to be sitting in a fab all day long. So that was my realization, being good in certain subject versus imagine yourself doing it day in, day out. Another fact that I had a scholarship for undergrad, and I had to finish undergrad, in a certain period of time. And I realized, well, if I go back and change my major, I'm going to lose a year, and I have to come up with the funding on my own. So with the help of a professor, I learned that you could pitch your own degree. It's called interdisciplinary engineering. You put up your own program, but you have to go to a committee and a dean within engineering school, and if they approve, I could use all the credits that I earned in 1 year and create my own program. So I did that. I went to information system, which is under School of Business and Engineering, combined classes from both disciplines, combined classes about computing as well as data structures, databases. I just loved those classes. So I was lucky enough that a committee approved it. So I ended up in a degree called Bachelor in Engineering, but it's called Interdisciplinary Engineering. And I was warned by many people, people outside know computer science or electrical engineering or chemical, you have a degree, valid degree, but you have to sell yourself, What does this degree mean? And I said, I am okay taking that risk. So I took that risk, and I've been thriving ever since. 2 years into working into technical hands, so after having my degree, I worked actually hands-on web development for AT&T. 2 years into it, I realized that I'm good at technology, but I'm even better at bringing people or cross-functional groups together to deliver one product as one team. So I did part-time MBA while I was working full-time. After that,
If I could stop you there. So I want to just put a pause on that. We can come back to some of those. But to hear from the panelists, if you have a challenge that you want to share, kind of reflect on over the course of either your education or your career and how you overcame that. And that could be something, we've heard a couple of the themes we've heard are, selling yourself, Ranjit, you just talked about how you have to do that, being constantly willing and open to learn new skills. And Amanda, you really talked about your technique of bringing other people together and saying, like, I'm okay with not knowing something. That doesn't make me lesser than. That doesn't make me a failure. We're all here learning. So that's expected that I don't know it. And now I'm going to stand up and say, why don't we all come together and have a peer support network of people who don't know it? So, this is not something that everyone needs to answer, but if you have any kind of learning or sharing your experience, really thinking about to try to encapsulate what that was and then how you went about tackling or resolving that.
So I can add on into my, yeah. So later on after doing MBA, I started my own company. So past 9 years, I had a business consulting company, very successful business. So I worked for many clients, NetApp, Microsoft, Google, solving business problems, doing large implementations for them. So one of the key learnings I want to share across all these companies, there are times I've been in meetings and discussions, a lot of smart people in a room, and everyone's throwing technical jargon because everyone wants to prove that, they know their stuff. And there are times I feel like I should know everything about everything. And throughout the years, I learned that it's okay that as long as I'm open to say, hey, I don't know, I'll go figure it out and I'll come back, that I don't have to be expert at one area. Because there were times I would hold back, right? Generally, in a room, out of 10, there would be maybe 2 women, and oftentimes I'm the only, female person in the room, like shy. I should only speak up if I really know my answer and I'm really sure about it. While others in the room, there have been times that some guys have thrown their ideas. I'm like, oh, I was exactly thinking about that. It was in my head, but I was really holding myself back from saying it. So that's the biggest learning throughout that I have, that any idea, any thought that you have, just raise your hand and share. If you are in a meeting, be present physically, and show your presence by participating. And don't let yourself hold back, because often I think even studies shows that female in general tend to be, we really want to make sure we are perfect before we say anything. So that's my personal learning over the years.
I think that's a great practice. It's not waiting until you feel like you know everything or your idea or your question is 100% perfect. It's participating. It's throwing it out there because there's so many becauses, but really because it's a value, and often you are the only one thinking that.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiment. I think that my biggest challenge has been myself, in that, am I good enough? Can I do it? I don't know this. This person knows more than me. All of these self-doubts are natural for them to come up. But I think it's exactly to your point, and that what I also have to find myself looking in the mirror and say, no, you've got this, girl. You can do it. I am my own champion, and I surround myself with a strong support network. I'm involved in a lot of different groups full of people who are like me with the same type of idea, and we support one another, and that's been really helpful to sort of pull myself out of self-doubt. But it's a natural feeling. It's just something that you have to acknowledge and appreciate that it's there, and then put it aside and get over it, because you got to move forward.
Yes, I think another skill that I've kind of had to learn as I've gone along, so I have a disability. I've had epilepsy since I was a young kid. So it's gotten better as I've gotten older, but it wasn't diagnosed until I was about 20 years old. So all I knew as a kid is I'd feel really weird. I'd get these really weird headaches. I'd have these really weird experiences. And I remember talking to people in my hometown, and they didn't know. To be clear, it's a rare form of epilepsy, so it was kind of hard to figure it out. And they would just kind of say things like, well, you're fine. And I'm like, I just knew that I wasn't fine. You know what I mean? So that was a little bit of a challenge. One of the things that I really had to learn is I had to learn what types of work worked for me and what types of work did not work for me. And that was because of my disability, but that could be for any reason, right? So for example, for me with my disability, I have to have a certain number of hours of sleep a night, otherwise I'll have a seizure. So I've had to learn, everybody else is working till 10 or 11 or midnight sometimes if you're in grad school or if you're in the early phases of a startup, and I've had to say, I can't do that. I just can't. I will not, I will not be successful with that. But what I've learned is things that I can do. So I've learned a lot of different coping techniques and strategies where I can get the same exact amount of work done, if not more, than other people. But it was partially just trying to be really creative, and also kind of giving myself permission, like you were talking about, of the way that I work doesn't have to be the same as the way that anybody else works. My working hours don't have to be the same. The way that I sit at my desk doesn't have to be the same. Where I work. So I think it's just really trying to figure out kind of what works for you and your particular challenges and your circumstances and your abilities and all of that. And if it's not the same as for somebody else, that is totally fine, and that's great, because you just have to figure out the way that's going to work for you personally. And it might change over time. I've had to, I had some things that were working in college, and then I had my baby, and I had to come up with a different set. But all of that is okay.
So just being an intentional creator of your life and your environment around you, I think that's really important. I mean, just as we would engineer or bring entrepreneurship to a problem, we can do that with the way that we structure our life and work and education.
Do you want to move on to something else? Yeah. I just want to echo what she said in a slightly different context. So, as I mentioned earlier, I have 4 kids, which means my work schedule and everything is not going to be exactly the same as all my peers. A lot of my peers have stay-at-home wives who take care of everything at home for the most part, and there is really no need to show up at home by a certain time, and so meetings can run till 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. and nobody's getting worried about this. And so over time, I just had to set boundaries for others as well as for myself to say, okay, this is what I can do. And I don't think I'm any less effective. It's just a different way of doing things and different way of managing your life and work and trying to figure out what works overall. So super, very true.
For any of the panelists up here, have you experienced a parental expectation? So your parents, your family really expected you to follow some career pathway, and you had a different interest or a different curiosity and really had to break away. And if you did experience that, how did you navigate that independent decision making within kind of the expectations of your parents? Again, I don't know if this applies, but I think it's a worthwhile question, kind of given the various ages of the Technovation participants here as they think about what really is compelling to them moving forward.
Sure. So not in terms of career choice. I come from a family of engineers. It was expected that I should be an engineer. So that part was fine. But then it was also expected that once I had kids, I kind of work a little bit, but focus on the kids and stop really focusing on my career. And that was a pretty big mental change I had to go through. There's a lot of guilt associated with it. Of course, you love your children, and you have to now pick. And there's just all this pressure from my parents, my in-laws, and society in general saying, hey, this is sort of what is expected of you now. And just to work through that and try to find what I really wanted, because it's not that I don't want to be with my kids, right? Clearly, I would love that. And sort of strike a balance that I was comfortable with was not easy, and it took time. It took time. It just took me getting to 30 to figure that out. I think part of it is just live through you. You just have to experience it and go through it. And I have an incredible supportive husband and friends and things like that to help me through that. And of course, the companies I've worked at have been super supportive. So that also helped. But it's still a personal journey of knowing what you want and standing up for it.
My parents don't know how to use the internet. They don't have emails and they don't have cell phones. So there is no real mission for me to be in a certain field. And I found it a personal sort of desire to teach them those types of things. And so I don't have the experience of them trying to guide me. And so instead, I kind of have felt unsupported on the other end of the spectrum when you're constantly trying to tell them what a startup is and all of these different things. So instead of blaming or feeling like I can't do it because they won't understand, I just appreciate them and their perspectives, and where they came from is not necessarily where I'm going, but at the same time surrounding myself with a really strong network among professionals and like-minded people, like I had mentioned earlier, in the community that I can sort of tap into and get mentorship and advice, sometimes even what you might hear from a parent, but from colleagues and mentors who I respect. So.
No, go ahead.
So I would like to add on, so like I mentioned earlier, I recently went on a vacation back home in Seattle, and I visited Vancouver as well. So I have many younger cousins. Some are in high school, and then one is in college, still figuring out what he wants to do with his life. And of course, a lot of family pressure. It's very common in Indian families to have a lot of pressure. Hey, and his parents are giving example. Look at your cousin and other cousins. One is engineer, one's a doctor, one's doing this. So I really had to sit down with him and his parents separately to have this conversation that his interests are different. And personally, when I was talking to him, so the lesson or the feedback I was giving him, that he should have enough courage, to take risks. Whatever he wants to study, even if he fails, he should fail, learn from his failure, and fail forward. And to the parents, the lesson I had to teach, or at least the conversation, was that you should not be comparing. Everyone's circumstances are different, interests are different, right? So there's a lot of comparison. Look at your cousin, she worked at Google, now she's at LinkedIn. Totally different, and how I ended up here is very different than his or her interest. So a lot of just teaching that. And another thing that I taught with him, and I talked to my uncles and aunts, is that because they think in order to be engineer or get into technology field, that kids need to have a computer science degree. So that was another lesson I'm trying to convey, that 10, 15 years ago when I was going to college might have been true. But now over the years, there are so many other fields that doesn't have to be exact computer science degree. So many other opportunities to learn technology and get into technical field that you should not be really forcing child to be in a particular discipline or in a particular university. So key takeaways basically, don't be afraid, take risks. And I know there are parents in the audience. I'm sorry, but let your child, you can guide, but beyond guidance, it's really they have to kind of learn. Either they success or fail, it's going to be theirs. And expectation is, if you could support them in whatever they want to do.
So how many of us sitting up on the stage have a computer science degree?
I have engineering, but not directly.
Okay, so engineering, computer science, right? The rest of us, I mean, your degree was in astrophysics, right? And then Stacy, you were around art and the business administration component of it. Eric, it sounds like Marcoms for you. I studied international relations, and I certainly don't have a technical role now, but the work that I do is really, it helps to try to bridge the technical and the community impact or the social impact. So there are many different ways to really approach the various elements that kind of shape technology and entrepreneurship today, because technology is so pervasive. It's not just something that occurs in a lab. It's everywhere. It's in every type of device, from our watches to our cars to, of course, our phones and computers. So I want to do kind of a rapid fire with the panel to hear what do you most enjoy about your job? Kind of what is like the quintessential moments when you're like, yes, I can't believe that I get to do this and this is my life, or I get paid for this. And I understand, I think it's also important to preference those moments probably don't come every day. If they do, you're very lucky. But what gives you great excitement or joy?
I'll start. The great excitement or joy that I'm getting out of my current role at LinkedIn is, first of all, whatever I do on a daily basis, stuff gets deployed, and I know over 400 million members are actually using it next day. And second thing is, on an exact same day, I'll be sitting in the meetings with engineers, working on technical problems, and same day I have a meeting with our CEO, talking about product decision or the project that I'm leading, what are the trade-offs we need to make, whether it be design trade-offs on the product side, or same day I'm talking to data scientist team saying the product that's going to get launched next quarter, how it impacts the metrics. So all of this, this technical aspects, this aspect of business trade-offs, or having a conversation with the CEO, all coupled into one day, I think absolute thrill ride for me.
I really like feeling like the work that I'm doing is helping people, and I also really like feeling like I'm that it wouldn't happen if it weren't for me. Like, I like feeling important, right? Maybe that's bad, but so one of the things I really like about my job is I do analysis for individual farmers. So individual farmers will send me data, and I'll analyze it and send it back to them, and that's really fulfilling because I know that I've helped them make choices on their farm. I've helped them save money. I've helped them grow more crops, and I also know that it's something that they're not able to do.
Just something more tangible.
Sure. So they'll send me samples of soil they've taken. So they'll test the dirt on their farm, and it'll have a certain pH level, or it'll have a certain nitrogen level. And they're trying to make choices about, should I fertilize this field? Should I not fertilize this field? Is this field a lost cause? Should I plant stuff on it? Should I invest in more seed on this part of the field or not? And so I'll send them information and analysis back to help them as they're making those choices. And it's cool because I've invested a lot of time in learning these skills that I have, and they're not skills that everybody else has. Farmers have amazing skills, but they're not data scientists. So it's something unique that I can offer them that if I didn't do, they just wouldn't have. So that's kind of cool as well.
And it's a pretty unexpected partnership, right, between farmers and data scientists. And so you're really helping their livelihood in terms of the income that they're able to collect from their farm crops, or the savings that they're able to maintain by not fertilizing a field or not planting a field that doesn't have the proper nutrients.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's sometimes where I'm able to tell them this thing that somebody else quoted you, that this was going to cost you $20,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. You don't need that. Here's some data to support that. You actually do not need that, so do not waste your money. And that can be really beneficial because that's a lot of money, and then they can put that into growing more food, into doing something else.
So I think I'm really lucky because I've always, throughout school when I was really young, loved to draw, loved to doodle, and I get to do that, and I get paid to do that. And what I mean by that is, at an early stage of a product or a feature, you're brainstorming. And really what I have to do at that stage is think about ideas, like be creative. And that to me is really exciting, and that to me is really, really rewarding that I get to do that. And, that's my job, so.
Stacey, do you have practices that put you in that creative space or that creative flow?
Whiteboarding. So whiteboarding is something where you just, you start with a blank canvas, but you just take a marker and you start to sort of write out words. That's called like word mapping. So you can try to pull out key phrases of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to solve. And then, of course, since it's a digital product usually, then I start to draw out screens. And at this stage, it's really being, it's okay to be rough, and it's okay to have rough ideas and rough drawings, but those are some ways. And sticky notes, like using sticky notes in fun, creative ways too. So those are a couple ways, yeah.
When you're trying to get an idea off of the ground, and especially when you're a founder in the early stages, there is a lot to do, and it can feel very overwhelming and almost like you're not going to get it done. So my coping mechanism is really help me in that I set small, achievable goals for myself and then do a little happy dance when I get to those goals. So it's like, oh, I just got my branding in, or this is working now finally, or the business plan just got really great feedback and I scored this advisor as just little things along the way every day that can help me feel like I'm making progress. And it's just really exciting when you finish something, because sometimes you try and then it doesn't quite work out, and you need to iterate, and you need to try again in a better and a different way. And when you reach that goal, it feels so good.
I think that's great because we, those of you here are clearly ambitious. That's what has brought you to Technovation. And when we are ambitious, we always set higher and higher expectations, more for ourselves to do. And so to take that time to break it down and then to really celebrate your accomplishments rather than having your mind go directly to what is left to do, what I have not done, is the way that you're going to, one, reflect on your progress, and really, two, gain more energy and kind of endurance to keep going with that. So I love that suggestion.
So for me, there are two things that I enjoy a lot. So I lead a database product. It's an analytics database. It's pretty dreary for the most part, right? It's not Facebook, it's not Twitter, it's not Snapchat. It's not something that people connect with. It's like what a data scientist would use. You put in petabytes of data, and then you get...
Yep, we use that.
Okay, and then you get analytics out of it, right? But the points where I've been super excited have been when randomly, every day I troll Twitter to see if anybody's chatting about my service. And I'll randomly get these angles. Oh my God, Amazon Redshift is awesome. This shit just works. Or something like that, where there's an emotional response from users. It's pretty special because you don't expect that from a product like this. The other thing that gives me a big high is when I see folks who work on my team get better. And over time, it's like there's a lot of mentorship, everybody's under a lot of stress, you do lots of different things. But then after 3 months, I see them, really get into their stride, really start taking on bigger things. They start believing in what they can do. They've just become a better person, more competent, more confident. And that gives me a tremendous high, because at the end of the day, it's about wanting to have impact. And one way to have impact is by helping others have impact. And that's a long-lasting strategy to have impact. So.
Thank you. That's great. So at this point, I want to turn it over to questions from you sitting in the audience, both students, mentors, parents who are here. Yes. If you could stand up and just say your name and where you're from, and then your question.
It's really very personal, right? In my case, it happened, I had 2 kids back to back, 2 years apart. And then there was just this, okay, shouldn't you be focusing on them? And I think for me, it was really to understand. So one, I had to have a very supportive somebody, right? In my case, it was my husband. I also had a female mentor at work who said, you're still the same person you were 3 years back. You suddenly didn't morph into some other pumpkin here. And so, let's just be like, let's be real, let's stick to the facts. And for me, it really boiled down to two things. One is desire, and two was letting go of fear, right? The desire is, do you really want it? Do you really want to be successful at work? Because, at this point, having gone through all of that, clearly I've kept having kids even after that, is I think I can be a great mom and I can be great at work, and I'm very confident, a parent and confident at work. I don't feel it's either or, and I don't feel I'm bad at one because of the other. I can just be bad because I'm bad, but not because of the other. And so I think it is a personal journey where you have to, you might choose not to do that. You might choose to stay at home. You might choose to take a very easy job. And all of these are right answers. It's just about understanding yourself and what you really want, and then building a support structure around you. That's super important. I have a very helpful husband, but I also have super helpful nannies. And I couldn't do without my nannies if I had to pick. So you just have to also, be real about, what it takes to be successful, and sort of build people and communities around you. And it actually gets easier further down in your career. At this point, it's a lot easier for me to be successful at work than it was 8 years back, because I was much junior and I had fewer resources. I had, I didn't have as much confidence. It was just a very different thing. And then over time, when you get more money, you understand what you're having is real impact. You've actually had some successes along the way. The most difficult part is when you're not sure whether you're going to be successful at anything, and you sort of have to go with what you really want to do and hope it works out.
So I will add to that as well. So I do think that of course, there's both to have a career and to have a family are both demanding and taxing. And what has been helpful for me in continuing my career, not only is a great support structure, and I agree, I have a very supportive partner, but also thinking about what do I really want? Like really tapping into that. What is going to make me most happy and most fulfilled? And I think, I'm grateful that I have a job that allows me to also hire support for my children. So without that, though, I want to kind of also offer that there are seasons for everything. And this is what I tell myself a lot, right? I don't have to have everything all at once. That's really tough, because if I do, I probably have no peace of mind. So then I'm letting that part go. So I have to pick, what do I want in this season of my life? And the rest of that doesn't mean that it falls away. It's still in my mind or still in my heart, but it means I will get to that later.
This is a question actually one of my cousins recently asked during my visit. She is 19, and my very first answer to her was that you should not be picking your career based on family that you might have 10 years from now. Like, she was thinking, if I go into this career, you think I would have an easier time raising a family versus if I have this. So my advice was, you are 19, you might not have kids for 10 years, right? So don't base those decisions based on, how or what it would be like to have a family. And second thing that helped me personally was I really had to, echoing on, like, you have to be really strong. I never felt more, like, I never thought about myself or my career like I did after having a child, especially the second child. One child was still okay to manage. After I, chose to have a second child, really became a challenge on, how do I stay on top of everything? And my personality is I'm very hard on myself. And I get a lot of that feedback, Ranjit, you don't have to be perfect at everything. So I really had to train my mind to block out all those, comments you get, even at work, negative comments. Oh, she has to leave at 5 or this. So it really had to, there are days I say, if meeting is urgent, even directors and VPs, they know now, because I am leading a very visible project. If something is important, I'll stay beyond this point. Otherwise, after putting kids to bed, I'm available again. Let's talk after 9 p.m. if it's needed. So setting those boundaries. And it was really personal journey just to see that I took 4 months off after the first child, and I realized 2 months after that, it's very nurturing to, feed your baby and all that, but mentally, like, I was missing. I needed that mental challenge, and I couldn't wait to go back to work. So you could not, those are the things people will tell you, but you don't realize until you are there.
Did you want to offer something? And then we've got a couple
Looks like we have some more questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you had your hand up earlier.
I'll start since I have a mic. So I think it actually bothers me a lot less now, but when I first started, particularly in physics, but even still days in data science, I have days when I'm asked to do things that I do not know how to do. I'm asked to analyze data in a way that I've never done before. I'm asked to write code that I don't know how. Sometimes I'm asked to write code in a language, just like 2 months ago, my boss was like, I need you to write this program that does this thing. And I'm like, I haven't heard of that thing. I don't even know what that is. I need you to write this code that runs really fast. Okay, I'm not a computer engineer, so I can write it, but it's not going to be fast. And I need you to do it in this language. I'm like, that word you just said, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. When I was younger, I would get really frustrated on days like that because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And because I've been doing it for so long, now I'm like, okay, well, this is like the 1,000 other times I was asked to do something that I didn't know how to do, and I thought I wouldn't be able to learn it, and then you Google and you fail and you ask your boss, and I'm a crier, which I'm not okay. I'm not saying is okay. I'm just saying for me, when I get frustrated, I cry. I don't cry when I'm sad or hurt, but when I'm frustrated, I cry, which I hate. So there's been a couple times when I had to go to my car and cry in the car because I'm frustrated. But then I go back and then I figure it out. And so that for me has always been the hardest part, but I feel like that's gotten easier as I've gotten more senior in my job.
Ditto.
I never cry. Seriously, I never cry. People think I don't have emotions sometimes. I do, just don't cry. For me, the worst part is letting people go. That's hands down the worst part of my job.
Letting people go is in having to fire them.
Having to fire
yes. Okay. Yes, I think you have your hand back there. Advice for high school students in choosing a career.
I really believe that you should think about the things that you're really interested in, not right now, and something you'd be really, really interested in, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and try to connect those. If it's really broad, try to connect those into an area. Is it in fashion? I'm thinking of the things that I thought about. is it in the medical field, and try to. And I'm going to plug LinkedIn here, but try to find people that, are doing things kind of in that area, and see what schools they went to, see what majors they studied. That's one way. Another way is, just kind of reading online. I think online is such a great source for just discovering what you want. One time, the first time I found my major, I just Googled art and business, and I found my major through that method. So I think don't put too much pressure. And one thing I will say is, you can see from the panelists sitting up here, you don't have to end up in the major that, working in the major that you studied. I think it's about the willingness to work hard, the willingness to try things, and working step by step to get to where you want to go. So.
Explore. Be really, really curious while you have the opportunity. I think study abroad, if that's available to you. I think internships are a fantastic way to get your hands in. Sometimes you glamorize something and then you get into it and it's terrible, or it's awesome and you want more of it. And so that can really help you navigate that. As you get out of college, though, you have less and less of a chance because you got to start paying those student loans and you have bills to pay. But when you're going in that, there's internships for people in high school, early stage of go to good clubs, just explore and be curious, and that will help you identify what you love, what makes you tick.
Okay, we've got a question in the back, yes. All right, so given the rapid pace of technology, what advice do we have for keeping up with that kind of handling change management specific to technology?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing for me has just been to get good at learning things. Like, it's not even necessarily to get good at certain things. It's to develop the ability to learn something quickly, and you just practice that. So I think, learn one thing, and then learn another thing, and then learn another thing, and teach yourself that you're capable of doing that. Because the technology, the skills that I used 10 years ago and even the skills I used a year ago are not at all the same as the skills I use today. But because I've made it a habit to try to learn new things, then I can do that. And also, I know that I can do that. So that means that I'll apply and I'll try to do things that I know I can't do, because I'm like, well, by the time it comes around, I'll probably figure it out.
That's great.
Okay, so we'll do one more question because we are at time. I think, yes, go ahead, please.
So how do you communicate to a teammate who's having a problem, or if you're having a problem, how do you communicate that to a team?
Yeah, if you're unwell and you want to make sure that you're not defined by your disability.
Yeah.
But you're an engineer because of your engineering abilities, not because of what's holding you back.
Sure. So since we're almost at time, I'll give you kind of a shorter answer. So so this is just for me. The most important thing for me was to understand that I was not broken, because I would come to those, because sometimes I would come to those conversations, but always in the back of my mind, I'm like a broken person, and I like can't really do this, and I'm like asking for a favor from somebody because there's something wrong with me, and like, because I had that sense so strongly in myself, it really affected the way that I interacted with other people. And I found that until I kind of rooted that out in myself, I just couldn't have productive conversations. And so now I'm coming from a place of like, I have a disability, and guess what? Everybody else is different too. So everybody else is human. Everybody else has issues and challenges. I happen to have something that's maybe a little more severe than other people, but nobody's a robot. Nobody can work 72 hours at a stretch and have that be productive. That just doesn't work. So for me, it was kind of changing my attitude, and then also trying to be very frank. And sometimes I don't tell people like the full story, but it's also easier to just kind of give people as much detail as you can, because if you're just like, I'm not feeling well, they're like, well, I had a cold too, and it's not helpful. And then also kind of knowing in advance what you need, because like people try to help, but they don't know how. So I'll say things like, okay, so I have this disability, so I can't answer emails past 9 p.m. And if that's a problem, let me know and we'll come up with a plan. But I can answer emails during these other times. And then I try to have it be a good, open communication. So if there's a problem that comes up, then they can talk to me, I can talk to them, and we can work out some kind of a plan. Because the idea is always, I can still do this can still get done. I'm not dumping my work on you. We just have to might kind of change it. And then, oh, by the way, what do you need from me? How can I make this easier on you? So how can we make it better for the both of us? Not just for me because I'm in some weird situation, but just because we're all humans and we all are a little bit different.
Thanks. So we are at time. So perhaps the panelists have a couple of minutes to stick around, but I really want to thank them for their wisdom, their insight, and sharing some of their personal experiences. And thank you for joining us today. I've been part of Technovation for a couple of years and have really witnessed the incredible products and app development and concepting and learning that goes into creating these, and it is really mind-blowing. So I really want to acknowledge those of you in the room, as well as your parents and the mentors who are supporting you on this journey. So thanks, everyone.